everybody, it's Thursday, March 13th, 2025. Welcome to the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast. We're also waiting for Aaron Rodgers. It's me, your man, MG Marcus Grant, joined by Michael F. Florio and Laquan Jones. I'm checking my timeline. I haven't missed anything, right? He still is on a beach wearing a blanket or something right now. Is that what it is?
He probably paid for that beach because you got to pay for your beaches in Jersey for some odd reason.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm flabbergasted. Like, I'm speechless. Like, what?
Yes.
Like, for the beach, like, not for parking at the beach, but like to go on the beach, you have to pay.
All the Jersey Shore folks know. Yes, you were paying $10, $20, depending on where you're going, which beach, where you're going.
That's why Snooki had so much trouble finding it. That makes more sense now.
I am literally flabbergasted. Like, I've never been to a beach in Jersey. I can't imagine it's as, I'm going to be biased here. I can't imagine it's as nice as an LA beach. Like,
don't go in the water. I go to the beach for the sand and the boardwalk and the games.
All right.
Funnel cake.
I know the Bobs are going to get unhappy with me for this, but like if Draymond Green was a free agent, we wouldn't have wall-to-wall coverage of where he's going to sign. So why are we doing this for Aaron Rodgers?
I don't know. I honestly was thinking that same thing this morning. Like, why are we letting this man hold us hostage with coverage? Why? He is 41 years old. He is long past his peak, and he's just generally a headache now. Like, why are we letting this man hold us hostage? And if I'm a Steelers or a Giants fan, I'm even more upset that this man is holding our teams hostage.
Russell Wilson should ask him to throw hands right now.
Yes. Yes. Like, this is ridiculous. That being said, I am checking my timeline to see when he inevitably signs, because if it happens during the middle of this podcast, we're going to have to talk about it.
There was 19 quarterbacks who threw 400 or more passes last year. In like every metric, he ranks 16th through 19th. I'm like, and that includes Kirk Cousins being in there. Like, it's
at this point in his career, he is mid.
I don't even know if he's mid anymore.
I mean, obviously he's a Hall of Fame career, but at this point in his career, he is not that same dude. Steelers, clean yourselves up. You're better than this.
Like, if he wants to still play, by all means, still play. And if teams want you, that's cool. But you don't have to. Like, Peter Schrager yesterday was like, he's going to wait a month because he knows we'll talk about him all month. And I was like, you know what?
You don't have to.
He's right. Like,
you don't have to. You don't have to. We don't have to argue about what Stephen A. Smith said about LeBron James. We don't have to talk about what Aaron Rodgers is doing. We are a free people who can decide what we talk about. We don't have to. Like I said, though, repeating, that being said, if he signs, we're going to talk about it here on the show. All right. We do have a lot to talk about on the show, though, because free agency is still going on. There are signings. We will catch you up on the latest fantasy relevant free agent moves. Also going to talk about some of the guys that are still out there. Against my better judgment, I am going to talk about some of the guys who are potentially still out there, knowing that the way things happen, that by the time we finish this show or by the time you listen to this show, some of these things could have changed. We'll also dive into some of the winners and losers of free agency so far, understanding that, look, there's still more guys to sign. There's still the draft. Things can change. But, we got to fill about an hour. So this is what we're going to do. Let's start, though, with some of the latest updates when it comes to player movement around the NFL. The Rams apparently unable to strike a deal to trade Cooper Kupp. They are going to release him, so he's going to be a free agent. So add one more wide receiver to what was already a very shrinking wide receiver pool. I don't know. I feel like we've sort of talked about this a little bit. Although I guess now that potentially he's a free agent, Laquan, I saw you mention yesterday that you think the Jaguars would be a nice fit for Cooper Kupp.
Oh, yeah, definitely. With Liam Cohen, he knows his work, man. I mean, they have a vacated spot for, a veteran to sit in that slot position. I mean, I love Parker Washington, but I think Cooper Kupp, you can get a lot more out of him, and he doesn't have to be the wide receiver one. So I think it would be a nice plug and fit. So you have Trevor Lawrence since 2021. He's top 5 in targeting the slot position. It's obviously his favorite position to be targeting. You got rid of 2 of his most familiar guys in Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. It just makes too much sense that you could put him there and it work.
Is it going to hurt your heart to have to cheer for Trevor Lawrence?
Yes, it will. Absolutely.
Let's get him on the Patriots, man. Drake May needs someone to throw the ball to, right?
Yeah, I really feel like Drake May and Cooper Kupp could be something as well, too, man. Like, I would love to see that and be able to root for Drake May and Cooper Kupp.
It does fit a certain Patriot aesthetic, too, having Cooper Kupp there with Drake May throwing him the football. Although he's a little too tall, Cooper Kupp, to be a prototypical Patriots slot receiver, right? I think he's a little bit too tall for that to happen. So we'll see. I mean, but Florio, if wherever he lands, whoever he's with, is he still a wide receiver one, or has that ship sailed on Cooper Kupp?
That ship has long sailed. I had hope for him last season coming into that he could. I didn't think he would be like, the Triple Crown winner or anything like that. But I thought like it could be 1A, 1B, him and Puka Nacua, and like they would be very close. And Cooper Kupp was going a couple rounds later, but that wasn't the case. Like I know Cooper Kupp started the year when he came back really hot, but he faded as the year went on. And there was a stretch where it was just really hard to use him. So I think he is at this point more of a complimentary piece in real life and in fantasy. But, he's the name Cooper Kupp. People in August are going to see it and they'll probably pull him up the board a little bit because it'll be like the middle rounds or whatever. And someone will be like, Cooper Kupp is still here? Give me that all day.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. The very astute, very, very wonderful Arif Hassan, you can follow him on social media. He did make the point that there's been a lot of hubbub over Cooper Kupp, a guy who has won All-Pro season, right? Now, amazing. It was an amazing season, right? And he ended up with a Super Bowl MVP. But really, I mean, you look, he's got 2 1,000-yard seasons in his career. He's got 2 seasons with double-digit touchdowns. He's been great for fantasy, but it does seem like the hype is a little bit outsized for what statistically he has done in his career. I'm not asking you, Laquan. I'm not asking you, Laquan.
Don't do this.
I'm not asking you, Laquan. I'm not asking you. That's all.
It is pretty wild. He has 2 1,000-yard seasons and 2 double-digit touchdown seasons and 1 100-catch season. But that year, he blew 145, almost 2,016. It was the best wide receiver class year of a generation. But besides that,
more to us than the numbers, man.
He was obviously very good for the Rams. He helped them win a Super Bowl. But yeah, I mean, I think when you take a step back and you sort of look at the entirety of his career, that maybe it's not what we've hyped it up to be. Again, I'm not asking you, Laquan.
Hall of Famer, not an NFL Hall of Famer.
Yes,
hey,
that's 100%.
Don't even start that yet, man. Chill.
That's 100%.
He's not an NFL Hall of Famer.
He's not an NFL Hall of Famer.
I thought about this, and I'm not going to say it out loud or accept what you guys are saying right now. But Cooper Kupp means more to us as in
wrestling. He's a Ring of Honor guy.
Absolutely, he's totally a Ring of Honor guy. If you guys, if the Rams want to retire number 10 or whatever, have at it.
No.
David Wright means more to me than any baseball player ever. The Mets are retiring number 5. He's not a Hall of Famer, though. I can accept that.
Yeah.
I cannot. As of now.
In the last 2 shows, Laquan has tried to put both Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, just no questions asked in the Hall of Fame. Just
I do think
walk right
Stafford
into
gets in personally.
Yeah, but I mean, Laquan was just like, locked down, solid, no discussion about it.
You did replace Cooper Kupp with a Hall of Famer, though. Devontae's going in.
Oh
you
my
did replace
God.
Him with a Hall of Famer.
I guess.
True.
I guess that works.
Speaking of big-time wide receivers, I don't know if DeAndre Hopkins is a Hall of Famer necessarily, but he's had a very good career. Now it appears he has entered the ring-chasing portion of that career. Was with the Chiefs last year, now is signing with the Ravens, 1 year, $6 million. I mean, Florio, obviously his best days are sort of behind him. I don't know that he's not taking a downgrade in quarterbacks going from Patrick Mahomes to Lamar Jackson, but realistically, what can we expect out of DeAndre Hopkins for fantasy now?
This reminds me of like Julio Jones on the Titans or the Bucs or AJ Green on the Cardinals, stuff like that, where like a big name aging wide receiver is at a point where fans are going to hope that he could get back to what he once was. But I think realists know that those days are behind him. He's going to be 33 at the start of the season. Last season, he struggled to stand out on a Chiefs team that was desperate for a wide receiver to stand out. He's had declining metrics the last couple of years. And I had someone in my mentions being like, he's literally a year removed from being a 1,000-yard receiver. And it's like, yeah, but it took 150 targets for him to break 1,000 yards. He's not going to get 150 targets on this Ravens offense. So I even had someone in my mentions be like, I'd take him in the 6th, 7th round. And I think there's going to be hype there. Us fantasy, sickos are going to be like, no, but the average fan is going to see DeAndre Hopkins teaming up with Lamar Jackson and get very, very excited. But I'd rather Zay Flowers. I'd rather Rashad Bateman. I would rather the tight ends. I think he's at a point where he's a contributor. He's a leader in that locker room. And he provides valuable depth because the Ravens were very thin at receiver behind their top two. But I don't think for fantasy, he really moves the needle much.
We also have to stop. And I admit that I did this earlier in this very own podcast, but we do have to stop the obsession with 1,000-yard seasons. Like we need to bump that up. We do.
Yeah.
Over 17 games, 1,000 yards is less than 60 yards a game. It's like 58 and change, right?
Yeah.
That's not great. Like it's just not. So like, I don't know. We got to raise our expectations. I don't know. 1,200 yards. Is that fair?
1,200, yes.
1,200.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to do some
now.
quick math because I'm not great at math. So 1,200. That's 70 yards a game. That
doesn't matter. He's not getting that on the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens don't value wide receivers. And I hate that it sounds that way. I don't know another way to put it, but they just don't. They're not priority. And for fantasy, like you get lucky with Zay Flowers with him being a flex wide receiver 3 option. And it's like, yeah, that's great and all, but you add DeAndre Hopkins to this definitely does not move the needle at all for me. I really feel like he's going to be same, but different, but still the same. Just in a Ravens jersey. It's not going to be any different from last season. But Florio's right. And I feel like that's why it's our job to sway the consensus of the fantasy guys out there and girls and just understand like the name does not, it should not still sell. You should look at the product of what it's been the last couple of years. Once he signed to the Titans, I said it. I was like, it's over. It's done. It's been a great run for DeAndre Hopkins.
I mean, I guess, yes, under the guise of do no harm, if we're taking our fantasy Hippocratic oath, yes, we should try to sway the hearts and minds of other folks out there. Or we could just let them draft DeAndre Hopkins in the 6th round. And
we reap the benefits.
We can reap the benefits. So it just depends on how petty you feel on any given day, how you kind of approach this situation. Laquan, you mentioned Evan Ingram. He has left Jacksonville. He is going to Denver, signed a 2-year, $23 million deal with the Denver Broncos. My first response is that I was on the network a couple days ago for Free Agency Frenzy, and they asked me about rookie playmakers and where they'd like to go. And I sort of suggested, like, hey, it'd be cool if Tyler Warren, the star tight end at Penn State, landed in Denver. Because Sean Payton has been trying to make it happen with the tight end position for a while. And I'm not talking about all the Taysom Hill nonsense, but sure, we could talk about the Taysom Hill nonsense. But whether it was, Juwan Johnson there, get to Denver. They tried to make it work with Greg Dulcich, with Adam Troutman. Nothing really happened. I thought Tyler Warren would be a really nice addition for Bo Nix. Instead, it's Evan Ingram. I mean, LQ, he did have 100 catches, 114 catches just a couple seasons ago. I don't expect that in Denver, but can he be, say, a low-end tight end 1 with the Broncos?
Some weeks, I would say that. Like overall, I don't know. It's just more so Sean Payton rotation of players. Like that's what scares the heck out of me. Like even you saying like them signing Evan Ingram, I don't know if that turns them off from the draft because it's like, okay, you got Javonte Williams, you have Jalen McLaughlin. Like you have these players and I don't understand why you're rotating them and drafting Audrey Estime. You have these wide receivers, Marvin Mims. We keep pounding the table for him to be a consistent starter, but he's coming off the field for most of the time. So who's to say this is different at the tight end position? And we obviously know Sean Payton's going to do what Sean Payton wants to do.
You just made me sad at the idea of them signing Evan Ingram and then drafting Tyler Warren. Like that just, because like I felt that way. Look, I felt that way about the Raiders drafting Brock Bowers. We see how that worked out, although, Michael Mayer's not a thing anymore. Like I thought Michael Mayer could actually be a really productive tight end. It's not going to happen as long as Brock Bowers is breathing. It just makes me wonder what, if they drafted Tyler Warren, which is an if, there's a good chance he won't even be there when the Broncos are on the clock, what that potentially could mean. Hopefully he won't be there.
Hopefully he goes to a team that will utilize him as the guy.
They'll actually use him. No, that's fair. That's fair. We'll see how that happens. The Panthers signed Rico Dowdle to a 1-year deal. Florio, I asked you the other day about Javonte Williams going to Dallas, and you basically said it's RIP Rico Dowdle. So obviously the Cowboys decided they are moving on. I don't know that I can get excited about this, considering what we saw from Chuba Hubbard. I also wonder if I'm a dynasty player and I have Jonathan Brooks, should I hit the panic button on this right now?
No, I don't think so at all. For either one of those players, I think the Panthers have made it clear for the last few years now that they want to have 2 running backs there, because that's kind of what the NFL is. Unless you have like an absolute workhorse running back, you need a good second running back. And last year they made it pretty clear they thought it was going to be Chuba and Brooks, and they had Miles Sanders there the year prior and last year. But Brooks has already come out and said he's not playing 2025, so they needed a 1-year stopgap to kind of be that insurance for Chuba, and Rico Dowdle kind of fits that. Like, I've seen people on Twitter saying like maybe he could be a bigger thorn in the side than any of the other running backs were last year, but we know how it played out. I'm much less worried about Rico stealing the job than I was Brooks. So I actually feel good about Chuba Hubbard heading into next year. And one interesting angle from this is Rico signed for the same amount of money as Javonte Williams. So the Cowboys just straight up picked Javonte over Rico, who they knew, who they had in the building, who just had 1,000 yards for them. So that is always very telling of a player. But my takeaway from it was kind of like Javonte's a better pass catcher. Maybe the Cowboys, I think they're gearing up to draft a running back early in the draft this year and make Javonte kind of the complementary piece.
Are you trying to get me back in on Javonte Williams? Is that what you're trying to do right
now? No,
that's what it was a
right.
He
could be. I think they think there's more upside there, but they're probably drafting a running back.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's true. Let's see what happens if they. Because they draft Ashton Genty, then all bets are off.
If they don't, though, then MG, I fully expect you to be back in.
Quietly. He won't publicly say it, but he'll have a lot of shit.
Look, if I'm back in at some point, I'll put it out here on this show. Like, I need some time with my thoughts.
You look at MG's teams at the end of August, you're like, yo, you have Javonte Williams on every team.
You got a lot of, like, you look at my underdog, roster percentages, it's like, well, I got Javonte Williams on like 80%. Like, that's going to be weird.
This happen again.
It's going to be weird. A few other signings to run through. I'll just list these all. You guys can tell me if there's any of these that sort of get you excited at all. This one just hitting just a few minutes ago. Raheem Mostert signs with the Raiders. Mike Williams is going back to the Chargers, so he's back in Los Angeles. Kenneth Gainwell signs a 1-year deal with the Seattle Seahawks. MVS, or with the Steelers, I should say. Gainwell goes to the Steelers. MVS, Marcus Valdez-Scantling, is going to the Seahawks on a 1-year deal. Van Jefferson, I will admit I was once a Van stan. Those days are behind me, but he is signing a 1-year deal with the Titans. Trent Sherfield gets a 2-year contract with the Denver Broncos. Jalen Reagor, who will forever be tied to Justin Jefferson in NFL draft history, agreed to terms with on a contract with the Chargers. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine goes to the Miami Dolphins. Joey Bosa making it in here in this list, mostly because he went to the Bills, and I'm sure, Florio, you're the one who put this here in the rundown.
I did not.
Oh, all right. And Mason Rudolph. Look, I don't have full control over it. Sometimes I walk away and things show up in the rundown. Like, I don't know. Mason Rudolph is coming back to Pittsburgh, 2-year deal for $8 million. So, Florio, aside from the Joey Bosa going to the Bills, anything here that moves the needle for you?
One, and not in the way you would expect. I'm happy to see Kenneth Gainwell end up on the Steelers, because this was a really interesting week for Jaylen Warren, because the Steelers chose to tender him and keep him there, but they let Najee Harris walk, and they didn't bring in another significant running back. Like, Kenneth Gainwell is what he is at this point. He's a quality backup, but he has to still survive the draft, which is the biggest hurdle for incumbent running backs this year. But Jaylen Warren right now, his stock is definitely shooting up after free agency.
I'm with you, because when I first saw it, I was kind of like, oh no. And then I was like, well, all right, maybe not. Like maybe it's just sort of a stopgap sort of measure here for the Steelers. And then maybe it's still the Jaylen Warren show. Anything among that group for you, Laquan, that was of note?
I'm happy for Van Jefferson because I was a Van stan, but that's for real life football. But for fantasy, I think you could look at Raheem Mostert as like, okay, I feel like he thinks he still has someone to tank, but the Raiders are most likely going to be like a run first offense. So if he gets some touches, I'll take a late round stash dart on him, man. Just being a fan of what he's done, these last couple seasons in Miami. I mean, Raheem must start was a thing. So I do want a quality back. If he's healthy this season and he gets on a run first offense, he gets some opportunity. Hey, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Raheem must start days are probably done. But again, all of this is pending what else happens between now and, say, the start of training camp. I don't see why he wouldn't get touches over Zamir White. Or, I don't know, is Alexander Madison going to come back?
Alexander Madison.
Like, I don't know if he's coming back. We had a great couple of weeks with Sincere McCormick. I mean, that was fun for like 2 weeks until he got hurt. So, I mean, at least right now, Raheem Mostert looks like the number one back on this roster. And then we'll see what the Raiders sort of decide to do. So of all the work that we do around here, around free agency, maybe the most valuable piece of content that comes out every year is Greg Rosenthal's list of the top 101 free agents. You can find that on NFL.com. He lists them at the start of the free agency period, and it is updated as guys sign. So decided, now that we are a couple days into this and we've had a lot of movement, to go back through his top 101 free agents and talk about the guys that are still available, that are going to be fantasy relevant. There have been some changes. I mean, there were 3 guys that were on the list yesterday when I built this rundown that got taken off the list because they signed between then and now. But still a handful of guys of note here. So I want to go through some of them. At number 11 on Greg's list is Amari Cooper. And I want to ask you about him, Florio, because he was with the Bills last year. It was not a great tenure, although, there's some talk that maybe he was not 100% healthy. But the history of Amari Cooper, both in real football and fantasy football, has been sort of a boom or bust, on 1 year, off 1 year sort of guy. Obviously, he is on the wrong side of 30 at this point. He's going to be 31 in June. Don't know where he lands. I don't know if you have a good landing spot for him, but it does feel like the days of Amari Cooper as more than, say, a third wide receiver in fantasy are probably over.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't fully healthy during his... I know he was dealing with like a hand issue that actually caused him to miss some time, but the usage was really weird throughout the playoffs and everything. I think the days are gone of him being a true dominant, like X wide receiver, number 1 in the NFL. But I still think he's got some good ball left in him. I think he could be a field stretcher, if nothing else. And a veteran leader, a name that still demands defensive attention, because that's what he did more than anything for the Bills last year. So I've since the start, before free agency, I've been like, just put him on the Patriots. Like and I know it's not like a broken record here saying every wide receiver, but like they have a good young quarterback, a ton of money, and they really need playmakers around him. The only reason I could see Amari Cooper being unsigned at this point is because he's probably asking for more money than teams want. It's not like no team wants to sign him. It's just probably coming to a financial number that makes sense for both sides.
I'm imagining now the Patriots like a scalper outside of a sporting event. Like, hey, anybody want a contract? Any wide receivers looking for a contract? Contracts? Need a contract? And so far, no takers. They almost got Chris Godwin.
They got Matt Collins.
They almost got Chris Godwin, if you believe the stories there. I mean, I don't know off the top of your head, Laquan, if you have a good fit for Amari Cooper. Like, I'm scrolling and I don't immediately see a great fit for him anywhere.
Send him back to Dallas. Send him back to Dallas, man. Him and CD can run it up again and see what happens. I mean, I just feel like it is the asking price. He probably wants more than 10, and we just signed Tutu Atwell for 10. I don't know if we're going to get in that ball range of Amari Cooper right now, who's just been decreasing in multiple wide receiver categories that matter to show that he could be productive. So it's like one of those things that if he goes back to Dallas, he could still be somewhat of a help as a name that you have to watch. on defense, and he knows somewhat of what they kind of want to do over there. Dak, I think he could support. I think, CD and him could really get it going. But overall, I don't see a right fit for him, like nail on the head, like he needs to go there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's possible. I just wonder if they would do that after they've already moved on from Brandon Cooks. Like it just, like I don't know if they would want to. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see an easy answer. I just don't see an easy answer for Amari Cooper, and maybe it is money. There just don't seem to be a lot of obvious fits for him at this point. Stephon Diggs at number 27, who missed a good chunk of the season after an injury early on in the year. Now, Florio Rosenthal's suggestion was maybe Diggs just goes back to Houston for another year, and they try to run it back with that group, especially if they're trying to figure out what's going on in Tank Dell. But he does seem like sort of like another one that really has a no obvious fit. Although I think did you mention Dallas? Was it one of you mentioned Dallas?
That's where I want to
play with his brother.
Yeah. Team up with his brother.
So they can rehab knee injuries together.
Exactly. You could be the number 2 for CeeDee Lamb. I don't think Diggs is a number 1 anymore. I think he's a number 2, and I think he can win quickly on like short to intermediate routes. He was already losing his downfield speed his final year as a Bill. Now he's 2 years removed from that and a knee injury. Like, I still think he could play, but I think he has to have like kind of a very defined role. And opposite of CeeDee Lamb, life is a lot easier than opposite of a lot of other wide receivers. So I think that's a spot where he could go and still succeed.
That is very true. That is very, very true. Yeah, I mean, I think Diggs will find a home. It's just a matter of where he fits in. I just wonder if at this point in his career, if maybe he's going to sort of, tone down the diva thing a little bit just so he can stick somewhere. I know. Look,
They can't quit it.
Isn't he dating Cardi B or something like that now? Like
that was the rumor that he was dating Cardi B.
You think his ego's going to get smaller?
Good point. Very good point. Number 53 on Rosenthal's list is Jameis Winston. Laquan, hear me out on this. What if we send Jameis Winston to Pittsburgh?
Yes.
I love it. And I know Pittsburgh fans will not love that. But for fantasy purposes, you need somebody that's going to be able to handle somewhat and make the good spirits in that locker room with the Crash Bros. And he's going to chuck it up to both of them. And they're going to enjoy it.
That's the part I like, is that he's standing back. You got two guys who can stretch the field. You want a quarterback who's just going to throw that YOLO ball and have a short goldfish memory if things go bad.
Yeah.
That's Jameis. That's
and
Jameis
then have two strong personalities in his face, raging red. He's going to sit there with a smile like, all right, brothers, let's get this going. Let's get this together.
Here's the thing. They're going to rage and be upset, and then Jameis will say something that's so cosmic and bonkers that they'll be just like, what? And that'll diffuse the whole situation.
I love that he's the highest ranked quarterback on this list, but there's like 0% chance he gets a starting job.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I don't see him going anywhere to get a starting job. I mean, I don't know, maybe, depending on what Aaron Rodgers does.
Yeah.
Maybe he ends up going to the other spot, right? If Rodgers goes to Pittsburgh, then Jameis goes to the Giants or vice versa. Like, maybe that's a possibility.
I've kind of thought it's like Russ is in that position. Like, wherever Rodgers goes, Russ goes to the other one is
possible, which is a perfect transition because Russ is at number 56, just a couple spots behind Jameis on Rosenthal's list. I mean, Florio, I've been saying that Russ going back to Pittsburgh makes the most sense. It seems like the Steelers have just sort of decided that they have moved on from Russell Wilson. If that's the case, I just don't know where it is. I mean, the Giants seem to be the only other real option out there, and I just don't think he's a fit with the Giants.
Yeah, and I'm becoming more and more convinced that the Giants are going to be in the quarterback market come this draft class if they can get one of the top two. So at that point, what is Russ coming in to start for a handful of games and then kind of transition out? So I think he's really hoping Rodgers picks the Giants and he could go back to Pittsburgh, because I agree with you, Marcus. Not only do I think there's a legit debate over which one of those two quarterbacks are better at this point in their career, in my opinion, it's not a question of which one is a better fit for that team, because Russell Wilson has played with DK Metcalf. He has played with George Pickens. He can throw those moon balls downfield like you were talking about. Both of these guys are deep ball specialists. Aaron Rodgers last year, I believe of quarterbacks who threw 400 or passes or more, had the lowest air yards per target. I'm double checking that real quick, but like, he was 18th of the 19th. Sorry. So like, he's not airing the ball out. He was throwing quick slants and stuff. So like, it doesn't fit that skill set of the receivers that you have and one that you just paid a whole bunch of money. So I don't really get it.
Yeah, I don't understand. I guess I feel differently if they were roster building differently, but they have built a roster that seems more suited to what Russell Wilson does, but they don't want Russ, so I don't.
My dark
really
horse in all this is probably the Titans. They need a quarterback, and we're not hearing much about them taking one off the board at the number one spot. Like, we've heard that they're open to move. They're open for Carter, the defensive player. They're open to move down. So it's like, we're not hearing like they're in the race for a quarterback right now, like of a Kirk Cousins or a Russell Wilson or even Aaron Rodgers. I think, Russell, that moonball to Calvin Ridley, that's all that Will Levis and Calvin Ridley were able to actually produce and connect on. So if Russell wants to be like a starter and not have as much pressure as the New York pressure, or even with DK Metcalf or George Pickens, just chill out in Tennessee, bro, and just throw the moonball to Calvin Ridley and just hang out.
If you want to be left to your own devices and just play football, Tennessee is the spot for you.
Yeah. I have been operating like they have Cam Ward already. I could be wrong, but I think they're not being in the market at all for a quarterback is because they already know who their quarterback is going to be.
Maybe.
As of now, looking at the depth chart on our lads, Will Levis is the only quarterback on the roster.
Yeah, that
cannot stand. It just can't. I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot of Abdul Carter mocked to the Titans at 1. It could also be, look, I mean, depending on what you want to do, knowing that there are some quarterback needy teams behind you, you trade down a couple spots. Maybe you trade down with the Giants and you still get if you really want Carter, trade down with the Giants. They take a quarterback at 1. The Browns take a quarterback at 2. You still get Carter at 3.
And then Travis Hunter to the Patriots. That's his wide receiver for Drake May. I like that scenario.
We got it all worked out. We have it all worked out. Number 63 on the list, J.K. Dobbins, coming off of a career year when I think most of us were just hoping, hey, man, maybe he can just stay healthy and be a little bit productive. Instead, he really was the focal point of the Chargers running game. Chargers, of course, bring in Najee Harris. That, Laquan, to me, suggests that they are not going to be back in on J.K. Dobbins again for this year. I mean, I guess anything's possible, but it seems really, really unlikely. It seems hard for me to find an easy landing spot for Dobbins right now, just because the running back class in this draft is so deep. Like, it feels like at this point, if he doesn't find a spot the next day or two, that Dobbins might have to wait till after the draft before anybody really comes calling.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility, but I got him pegged to the Bengals. I think that would be a great fit for him because they're looking for an efficient runner, a hard runner. Like, them going to trade out for Khalil Herbert was very telling of what they honestly think about Chase Brown. And it's not like a huge knock to Chase Brown and his ability, what he's able to do, because he cleaned up that back of the season as like an RB1. But it's more so the longevity of this backfield and how the direction of this league is going. It's going 1-2 punch. And they want a guy that's going to be like, we could just run him for, let's say, 20 touches, and then Brown, they split that up. I really feel as though J.K. Dobbins still has something in the tank. 13 games, 900 yards. Man, if he would have had a full season, we'll be talking about J.K. with damn near 1,100, 1,200 yards and a couple more touchdowns. But I feel like that 1-2 punch, that could definitely work. And the Bengals, it depends on how the draft falls with some of these deep running backs in this class. You might have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, from a fan standpoint, you're sending an Ohio State guy back to the state of Ohio, which, for whatever it's worth is something notable for sure.
Sign him.
I don't see where JK goes and he gains fantasy value. Like, yeah. I think last year is going to be his career year.
Yeah. That was going to be my question to you. Like, it feels like what we saw last year is sort of the ceiling for J.K. Dobbins.
Everything broke right for him. Like he, for the most part, stayed healthy, even though he did miss some time. There was literally no running back in that room that they felt could compete with him. Like Gus Edwards was dust. They didn't really trust Kamani Vidal. And then he was on an offense where he knew the system very well because he played with the OC before and they were very run heavy. I really this morning was trying to think about like where he could end up and I'd feel better about him. And I'm like, there's literally not a spot I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, again, I'm sort of looking and just trying to game it out, and I'm with you. Like, I just don't see a spot where he goes. Because at this point, I think wherever he goes, at best, he's in a timeshare with somebody else.
He's going to hurt somebody's fantasy value. So,
yeah,
that's kind of the reality.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, so looking last year, had 195 carries, understanding that, he was brought in to sort of split with Gus Edwards. He missed 4 games with injury. I think 150, 180 carries, probably the ceiling for him at this point, depending on where he goes. And he's going to have to split time with whoever it is, unfortunately.
I know we're seeing teams pay more and more running backs, and good for them, but like, this is the worst scenario for Dobbins because he's not one of the elite running backs, and it's a very deep running back class. So like, you could be like, do I want to pay this guy who's missed a lot of time big money, or do I just draft a running back in the 4th round?
Right. I know. Again, that's what I'm saying. Like, if it doesn't happen the next day or two, like I just don't know that J.K. Dobbins gets a call until after the draft, and teams are sort of looking at their running back rooms and trying to figure out where to fill in the gaps. Elijah Moore, number 80 on the list. I mean, Florio, I don't even know what to say about Elijah Moore anymore. It didn't happen with the Jets. Didn't really happen with the Browns. Again, he's another one who I think at this point is probably going to just sit out on the open market for a while. And I don't know that he's going to be anything more. Like, I don't know that he has fantasy relevance really at this point. Does he?
I mean, he struggled to find that really last year on a Browns team that was kind of, until Jerry Jeudy's breakout with Jameis Winston, like they were searching for production at receiver. And I don't know, we've seen 4 years of Elijah Moore. He has 9 career touchdowns. He's never reached 700 yards. At some point, you just got to say this is who that guy is. Like an NFL contributor for sure. Like he belongs on a 53-man roster, but doesn't belong on a 12-team fantasy football roster. That's right. The difference.
No.
I do have one, like Greg Rosenthal is so much smarter than me, but I do not understand in what world Elijah Moore is ranked higher than the next wide receiver on the list.
I don't get it. No, I'm with you on that too. I am absolutely with you on that one. And maybe one day we can ask Greg about it too. He can give us, his rationale for it.
Is age the reason?
I was about to say he's 24. I mean, that probably makes a little sense there.
I guess.
He's young.
I will say, I remember for at least a week or two in 2023 getting sucked into, remember when Joe Flacco took over as the quarterback of the Browns, and he's like talking up Elijah Moore and how they played together with the Jets, and like he was hyping him up, and like I did sort of buy into that for like a couple of weeks, and then like after 2 weeks it's apparent that like no, this is like I feel like after that happened, Moore's snap percentage went down like in back-to-back weeks. And it's like, okay, this is obviously not happening at this point. All right, enough of the suspense. Elijah Moore's at number 80. The guy at number 83 is Keenan Allen. Now, Laquan, granted, it was not the best season for Allen last year. The Bears offense did not turn out to be as explosive as we hoped it would be. Allen with 70 catches, 744 yards. He did have 7 touchdowns, so that was not a terrible number for him. He's 32 years old. He's going to be 33 coming up at the end of April. And I think to Florio's point, look, he's not what he was. He can definitely still be a big contributor for a real NFL team. How much of a contributor can he be for a fantasy team, though?
It's a gamble, and it's more so the landing spot if anybody has interest. I mean, the Seahawks, they have open doors for wide receiver weapons and name, threatening for defenses. I think him and JSN could probably work. I mean, the Bears, I honestly think you give it a shot with Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson would love to have Keenan Allen, work that slot, to work the middle of the field and kind of like try to mirror what the Lions offense has, or bring him to LA. To the Rams. I really feel as though you have to worry about that.
How many receivers do you need?
We need them all. We need to get back, baby. But no, if Keenan Allen, if he has anything that, has to offer for fantasy, it's probably like a wide receiver 3 flex, like it's one of those things that you won't be taking him off the board with high expectations as he's your wide receiver 1 or like your wide receiver 2 that can contribute every single week. It's really going to come down to who's the quarterback throwing him the ball and what the system and play calling is going to look like for him, because he could still get open. He could still be a reliable wide receiver, catch the ball, play outside as well. It's more so what does the environment look for him to actually produce for fantasy.
Keenan Allen feels like one of those guys where, the sharps, the early drafters are probably going to avoid him for the most part, but he'll be that guy that in the middle to late part of drafts, when you get more of the, more of gen pop drafting, they'll look at it and be, oh, Keenan Allen. Like I know that guy. I remember that guy. He's been good for me for a while. Like he'll get pulled. His ADP will get pulled up when we get to like August, because a lot of people, whatever, like they have lives. Shout out to them who are doing this all year long. They don't necessarily aren't paying attention to him maybe being in decline or being, a little bit older in his career. They will draft him because of that. But
it's worth noting, though, that his situation was a huge decline. I mean, going from Justin Herbert to, wet behind the ears, Caleb Williams without a no line and a terrible play calling system. So it's like,
true.
It wasn't exactly only him,
Yeah, no, for sure.
I want him in Carolina because I think he could be better than that. Like, he needs a lot of volume, but we've seen Adam Thielen each of the last couple of years put up like 6-week stretches where he's a wide receiver 1. Keenan Allen could still do that. Like, so Bryce Young needs some help. In my head, like my first thought was, hey, you can go to Carolina. And then it was like, are we going to do that again? Are we going to send another aging veteran to Bryce Young to It worked with Deontay until it didn't. It worked with Deontay for 3 weeks. Like it didn't last very long with Deontay Johnson, right? It's like you have 2 friends and they're the only people who like anime, and you're like, hey, we should match them up and have them go out on a date, right? Like they may have nothing else in common, but they both like anime. So it's just like, hey man, here's a veteran receiver who's a free agent. We should send him to Carolina, and let him work with Bryce Young. I'm like, let's give Bryce something. And I like Keenan Allen, but let's let Bryce Young have a guy he can grow with. Look, I think you draft a receiver and you bring Keenan in to be the veteran slot guy, the security blanket. Yeah. I do want to point out though, I'm not letting this go. Keenan Allen had more yards last year than any season of Elijah Moore's career, and he had 2 fewer touchdowns last season alone than Elijah Moore's had in his career. I'm guessing it's an age thing. That's all I can think. It has to be. It's got to be an age thing. That's all. Number 101 on the top 101 free agents for Greg Rosenthal is Nick Chubb. I'm just going to throw this out to both of you. I mean, I know we all would like, from a football standpoint, to see Nick Chubb be successful after having a couple of really serious injuries. But are either one of you drafting Nick Chubb regardless of where he goes this year?
Absolutely not.
I was out last year.
Yeah. No, it's over.
I do think he should re-sign with the Browns, though. He's one of those players that should get to go out with the team that he's been so loyal to his whole career. I don't want to see him throw on another jersey and struggle, and then 10 years from now, we're like, remember when Nick Chubb was a Patriot or something like that? Yeah. We start doing those weird jersey things on social media, posting up Manny Ramirez on the Rays and then Nick Chubb on the Titans. Hakeem Olajuwon with the Raptors. What is this?
Torrey Holt on the Jaguars. Ugh.
Yeah. I mean, look.
Torrey Holt on the Jaguars.
I mean, Jerry Rice in a Broncos uniform just will never sit right with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Don't do it, Chubb.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, that part. But on the one hand, wouldn't it be cool to see Nick Chubb go somewhere and be with a contender, even if he's just a reserve backup piece? Hey, let him.
Chiefs? I feel like that's the easy landing spot.
Let him go back up Derrick Henry.
Yeah, that'd be all right.
Yeah.
Go to Baltimore. Nick Chubb deserves happiness too.
Then I could make more jokes about how much help Lamar Jackson needs.
You mean the Chargers, right? The LA Chargers.
Yeah, I said LA. I didn't say which one.
You mean the LA Chargers. You're out here hoarding players like Pokemon, man. Like, what are you doing? Like,
not even good players. Like, he just wants names.
Gotta sign them all. Like, what are you doing, man?
Any player that's closer to retirement, Laquan's like, come home.
Come on in. Down, though, for Elijah Moore to be a Ram. And I'm like, look, we need a slot guy, man. I'm willing to take whoever on this list, man.
No, let Devontae play the slot.
You were all excited about Tutu Atwell. You wanted Greg Dortch. Like, have Greg Dortch be your slot guy.
He is held captive in Arizona right now. I don't know.
Laquan, how do you feel about Elijah Moore making this list, but Greg Dortch not?
Very disrespectful, but I'm pretty sure like half the people in the building don't even know who Greg Dortch is. So it's all right.
But Greg Rosenthal knows who Greg Dortch is.
Yes, but he's not worthy of the 101. He's at 102. He's on the next version.
I'm gonna go with he's probably not at 102 either. But if that helps you sleep at night, then that's what we'll go for. You should tweet
him and be like, "Yo, what does Greg Dortch have to do to make your top 101?"
I'll do it. I'll do it now.
Good luck to you, sir. So obviously there are still guys to be signed. We just went through a whole big list of them. One guy that I failed to mention earlier in the show, Kyle Shanahan finally gets Mac Jones. Mac Jones signing with the San Francisco 49ers. Apparently the Niners and Kyle Shanahan, they're just sort of like a rehab for broken quarterbacks, like your reputation is sort of battered. Your performance has not been great. Come on down to Kyle's house of quarterbacks. We'll get you all fixed up. We'll get you all patched up and send you back out in the wild. It's like the SPCA for quarterbacks or something. We're just going to get you all patched up and we're going to send you back out there again. So, the
Niners and Vikings, that's what they've become in the Sean McVay could be that, but instead he's just like, I'm cool with Jimmy G for the rest of time.
I think Sean McVay has sort of painted himself into a corner because he got Jimmy and he's like, hey, Matt Stafford
having conversation with Sean because I just don't get it.
Matt Stafford, how much money do you need, man?
Oh my God. No,
I saw the Rams posted a video being like, he's back, and it was Jimmy G, and I legit started laughing at it.
No,
is that better or worse than the Bills Nathan Peterman QB1 video?
Better. That's the worst quarterback video. I mean, they in the middle of a playoff race started him and he threw 6 interceptions. What are we doing?
Let's talk some winners and losers though so far in free agency. Laquan, anybody that jumps out to you as a big winner and or a big loser so far through the first couple days?
Winner for me is Baker Mayfield. You get Chris Godwin back, the familiarity, and it puts him back in that top 10 fantasy conversation. And I definitely think, Baker Mayfield's probably as happy as I am, with my Chris Godwin shares and my Baker shares as well. Like, I'm looking at it like, oh, well, we're back. Even with or without Liam Cohen, I think Baker balled out and stepped up to the plate. And having all his weapons assembled is going to be very important.
I think you're right though, because they keep the band back together, right? The Bucks are going to ride with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin pretty much until the wheels fall off, which isn't terrible, man. I mean, we've seen what they've been able to do the last few years, so why not sort of keep that thing together? Any big winners or losers for you, Florio?
I know it feels kind of repetitive because these moves happen right away, but I think Justin Fields, Devontae Adams, and Najee Harris, to me, are the 3 players who gained the most fantasy value this week from free agency. And I think the biggest loser is Sam Darnold. You go from Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, and Kevin O'Connell's play calling system to Clint Kubiak, who's a solid OC, but then Jason is awesome. But then your wide receiver 2 is MVS. Your tight end is Noah Fant. Your O-line has questions. I don't think Sam Darnold is going to be able to repeat the fantasy success he had last year.
Yeah, Darnold was going to be my guy. That was my immediate answer for the guy who really takes the biggest hit. I think is just going to Seattle just does not work out for him. And I'll say this: I think JSN sort of fits into both winner and loser categories because he definitely gets an upgrade in target share with both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf gone. But I think we can debate whether or not Sam Darnold is a better quarterback option than what he's had the last year or two with Geno Smith. So, I think in one respect, he definitely gains. In another respect, I don't know. I don't know that it really improves his standing a whole lot. So, that one was sort of weird to me. So, I don't know. I thought you had something to say, Laquan.
No, I was going to say it is definitely debatable, but like Florio was saying, like I think Geno might be better in the situation. Like I'd rather it had stuck with Geno than get Sam in, because Sam is coming from the Vikings when you saw how he finished, and he's also in the division with the Rams twice a year every year, and the Cardinals defense got a little bit stronger, and it's like it's not going to be a fun time for him to be in that division with the guys that he has around him.
Yeah. I will also say I think DK Metcalf loses in this whole thing going to Pittsburgh. And, well, just because, one, they haven't decided on a quarterback yet, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be a guy that plays to Metcalf's strengths, right? Especially if they really are courting number 12, that it's just not going to really work out for him. But also, let's keep in mind, he's going to Pittsburgh with Arthur Smith, who wants to run the football. They've got Jalen Warren there. They bring in Kenneth Gainwell. We'll see how big his opportunity is. But it's just not going to be the same kind of offense that he's been in the last couple of years in Seattle. I think for a lot of us who've sort of been on the fence about DK Metcalf, I think this is an easy reason to knock him down your rankings and your draft board a little bit, because it's just not going to be the same.
And him and George Pickens they're like the same player, kind of.
Yeah. I don't think DK Metcalf is a severed employee, but I do think that they stylistically do have a lot in common. So, yeah, I don't know. But, look, still things to be seen, still moves to be made. I'm going through my timeline again, and I think we can say we are marked safe from Aaron Rodgers signing in the middle of our show. So we should probably end it right here. But we should end it right here before it happens, and and be done with it. So back with you on Tuesday again. We should probably do a mock draft sometime soon. Do another mock draft.
Let's do it.
See how things have changed now that free agency is in full swing. I'm sure there have been some movements when it comes to ADP. So maybe next week we'll do another mock draft that we can kind of talk about a little bit. Compare and contrast from the first one we did about a month ago. In the meantime, that'll do it for this edition of the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast. Stay happy, safe, and healthy. Do good and live well. Enjoy what's left of free agency. Don't let a 41-year-old quarterback hold you hostage this weekend. And we'll talk to you again real soon.